Chapter 3182. The exit of the ghost realm was opened. Farewell, clan leader. Lu Ming cupped his fists at Yuan Huan and stepped into the whirlpool. The light rays fell into darkness. However, not long after, the light rays lit up again and Lu Ming realized that he had appeared in a starry sky. From afar, there was a planet floating in front of him. That planet was the planet where they had entered the ghost realm. Obviously, the other entrance of the ghost realm was not on that planet but in the starry sky of the universe. Let's go back to the starry camp. Lu Ming's heart moved as he unleashed the Nine Heavens Kunpeng technique. Like a Kunpeng flying in the starry sky, he flew towards the Nine Heavens Heavenly King Mansion at an astonishing speed. The Nine Heavenly King Mansion was heavily guarded. However, when Lu Ming revealed his identity as a disciple of the starry camp, he easily entered the Nine Heavenly King Mansion and returned to the starry camp. After returning to the starry camp, Lu Ming first met Autumn Moon. Autumn Moon was naturally happy to see Lu Ming return. After all, Lu Ming had disappeared for more than 100 years and she was very worried about him. Although it was normal to cultivate for tens of thousands of years at their level, she could not help but be worried. After meeting Autumn Moon, Lu Ming found Wu Ming and Wu Yu to ask about Blue Maple. Wu Ming and Wu Yu told him that Blue Maple had left the Nine Heavenly King Mansion more than 100 years ago and returned to the Taishu Holy Capital. Lu Ming nodded and headed towards Blue Merchant's residence. Blue Merchant was also very excited when he saw Lu Ming. After all, when Blue Maple came out of the ghost realm and the Nine Heavenly King Mansion sealed the entrance, Blue Merchant was very worried. He was afraid that something had happened to Lu Ming. Now that he saw Lu Ming, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Ming, how is the Dark Ape Fighting Tribe? Did they submit to you? Blue Merchant asked. Success. Lu Ming nodded. Blue Merchant let out a long sigh and revealed a joyful expression. As Jing Yu's teacher, he knew very well how powerful the Dark Ape Battle Clan was. Now that Lu Ming had subdued the Dark Ape Battle Clan, he finally had some foundation to establish himself. Immediately, Lu Ming told Blue Merchant about the general situation of the demon ghost. You have broken through to the half-step Divine King realm? Blue Merchant's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Lu Ming, revealing a trace of pleasant surprise. His soul force was extremely powerful, and he immediately sensed Lu Ming's cultivation. Yes. Lu Ming nodded. Good. Come Lu Ming. Attack me with all your strength. Let me see how strong you are now. Blue Merchant said. Full power? Lu Ming said. That's right, go all out. Don't worry with your strength, you can't hurt me. Blue Merchant smiled faintly. Lu Ming naturally knew that he could not hurt Blue Merchant at all. Blue Merchant was someone who could defeat a peak Divine King. All right. Lu Ming nodded and then activated the battle symbol formula to increase his combat strength by 5 times. After so many years of cultivation, Lu Ming's chances of activating the battle symbol formula had increased from 1 in 50 to 1 in 30. After activating it a few times, Lu Ming successfully activated the battle symbol formula to increase his combat strength by 5 times. Divine Dragon Image. Lu Ming shouted as he waved his fists. 9-clawed dragon continued to condense in the sky. In the end, 36 9-clawed dragons were formed and pounced towards Blue Merchant. 36 dragons, not bad. Blue Merchant nodded. He still had his hands behind his back. The space between his eyebrows glowed and a powerful soul power rushed out like waves towards the 36 9-clawed dragons. Struck by this force, the 36 9-clawed divine dragons instantly collapsed, turning into energy and disappearing. It did not affect Lan Shang at all. However, at the same time that he used the Divine Dragon Image formula, Lu Ming went all out and transformed into a green-armored ancient god. Then, the Gate of Domination appeared above his head. Lu Ming stretched out his hand, grabbed the Gate of Domination, and blasted it towards Blue Merchant. Blue Merchant's expression did not change. He still had his hands behind his back. When the Gate of Domination was about to hit his head, he stretched out a palm and pushed it forward. Boom! The Gate of Domination shook violently. Lu Ming's body also shook, and then he retreated with the Gate of Domination. As for Blue Merchant, he was completely fine. Is that all you've got? Blue Merchant said lightly. Again! Lu Ming shouted. All the divine power in his body was mobilized and surged wildly. Buzz. The gate of domination trembled slightly, then pressed down on Lan Shang. At the same time, Lu Ming's hand glowed and an ancient stone spear appeared. It was the Overlord God's spear. Supernova! Lu Ming shouted and stabbed out with the spear. The combination of the Origin secret technique, the Overlord God spear and the supernova, turned into a terrifying energy that rushed towards Blue Merchant. This was Lu Ming's strongest attack so far. The battle formula increased his combat strength by 5 times, and the green-armored ancient god. 2 Origin secret techniques. Lu Ming's divine power was instantly sucked dry. This is the second Origin secret technique? Blue Merchant's eyes lit up and then he struck out with his palm. Rumble! Blue Merchant struck out with his palm, and heaven and earth shook violently. The terrifying palm energy rushed towards Lu Ming like an avalanche. The gate of domination was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. After shaking a few times, it quickly shrank and disappeared. Then, Lu Ming's attack was completely defeated. The powerful impact hit Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body shook violently and he retreated until he was 10,000 meters away. I'm done fighting. Lu Ming took a few deep breaths and then his body shrank quickly. He had used all his strength, and there was no need to continue fighting. This is your strongest combat strength? Blue Merchant asked. That's right. Lu Ming nodded. It's already shocking enough for you to have this kind of battle prowess at your level of cultivation, Blue Merchant said. Before Lu Ming could rejoice, Blue Merchant continued, but with your current strength, it's impossible for you to enter the top 10 when the Taishu Imperial Academy convenes. Impossible? Lu Ming's gaze froze. At first, he was a little unconvinced, but when he thought of Blue Maple, his unconvinced heart disappeared without a trace. Blue Maple's strength was shocking. With his current strength, he probably wouldn't be Blue Maple's match even if he attacked with all his strength. Then, how many people in the Taishu dynasty were comparable to Blue Maple, or even stronger than Blue Maple? Thinking of this, Lu Ming's expression turned serious. Although you're strong, you have a lot of weaknesses. First of all, the ancient god body consumes a lot of stamina. Also, your battle formula should have increased your combat strength by 5 times, but the triggering rate is too low. In a big battle, your opponent won't give you the time to trigger it successfully, Blue Merchant said. Lu Ming nodded. Indeed, the most suitable thing for him now was 4 times his combat strength, which had a 100% success rate. However, the triggering rate of 5 times his combat strength was too low. In a battle between geniuses, the slightest difference could lead to a huge difference. Who would give you time to trigger it? P.S. Readers, I'm the Shepherd Boy Tingzhu. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, 0 ads, and multiple reading modes. Chapter 3183. Therefore, if you want to enter the top 10 by the time the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court opens, there are 2 areas that you must make a major breakthrough in. That is your cultivation and origin source divine force factor. You must make a breakthrough in one of these 2 areas for you to have the confidence. For example, your cultivation must reach the Divine King realm, or awaken your origin source divine force factor for the other divine grade divine forces, or the second awakening of your sovereign divine force. Blue Merchant said. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. The Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court was not far away. How could he make a breakthrough in these areas in such a short time? Any breakthrough would require a lot of time. It's less than 60 years before the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court opens. To be precise, it's 56 years. Under normal circumstances, it's impossible to make a breakthrough in any aspect in 56 years. However, there are some supreme treasures that might allow you to make a breakthrough in a short time, Blue Merchant said. I'm afraid the price of such treasures is ridiculously high. It's not easy to get them. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Just because the 9 Extinction Heavenly King residents doesn't mean that the Great Void Imperial Family doesn't have them. In the Great Void Holy Capital, some of the major forces and aristocratic families have some treasures that can suppress their foundations. The effects are very heaven-defying, and some of them can help you break through. Therefore, I plan to bring you to the Great Void Holy Capital first. After all, the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court is about to start. Blue Merchant said. Going to the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court? Lu Ming's eyes lit up with anticipation. If the 9 Extinction Heavenly King residence was so magnificent, how magnificent would the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court be? Anyway, he would have to go to the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court sooner or later. When I was in the Great Void Imperial Family Holy Court, I was doing pretty well. I have some friends who have gone through life and death situations with me. I'll ask them to let you use those treasures to make a breakthrough in your cultivation. Get ready. We'll set off in 2 days. Blue Merchant said. All right. By the way, Lan Shu, can I bring the others with me? Lu Ming asked. You want to bring the girl with you, right? Of course. Blue Merchant said. Thank you, Lan Shu. Lu Ming said. He was indeed going to bring Autumn Moon along. With Autumn Moon's talent, it shouldn't be difficult for her to enter the Great Void Imperial Academy. Only by cultivating in the Great Void Imperial Sacred Academy would he be able to improve faster by Autumn Moon. After returning to his residence, he told Xiao Autumn Moon about going to the Great Void Holy Capital. For the next 2 days, they didn't cultivate. Instead, they quietly enjoyed life. 2 days later, Lu Ming brought Autumn Moon to Blue Merchant's place. At the entrance of the Blue Merchant's courtyard, Lu Ming saw an ordinary-looking young woman. Who is this? Lu Ming was surprised. However, when Lu Ming saw the expression of the ordinary-looking woman, Lu Ming knew who she was. When the ordinary-looking woman saw Lu Ming, she harumphed coldly. Especially when she glanced at Autumn Moon, her gaze became even colder. Lan Ling. Needless to say, Lu Ming also knew that this woman was Lan Ling. Obviously, Lan Ling had disguised herself. Lu Ming knew that Lan Ling would definitely follow Blue Merchant to the Great Void Holy Capital. However, the son of the Grand Tutor, Wu Fan, had his eyes on Lan Ling. If Lan Ling went to the Great Void Holy Capital with her real appearance, she would definitely encounter unnecessary trouble. Blue Merchant walked out of the courtyard and said, "Everyone is here. Let's go." The 9 Extinction Heavenly King residence was very far away from the Great Void Holy Capital. They were separated by many galaxies. Even if they took the interstellar transmission formation, it still took them a few years to reach the Great Void Holy Capital. Is that the Great Void Holy Capital? Standing in the starry sky of the universe and looking ahead, Lu Ming and Qiu Yu were both dumbfounded. Even though they were mentally prepared, the Great Void Holy Capital was still beyond Lu Ming's imagination. In front of them, there was a huge city floating in the universe. Yes, it was a huge city. It was a pitch-black, ancient city. It was so huge that it was even bigger than a planet of life. A city that was bigger than a planet of life. What kind of concept was that? Around this huge city, there were many planets of life that revolved around the huge city. Lu Ming counted. There were a total of 36 planets. 36 planets were revolving around a huge city. This scene was simply too shocking. You're really inexperienced. Seeing Lu Ming and Autumn Moon's dumbfounded expressions, Lan Ling took the opportunity to harumph. Of course, Lu Ming ignored Lan Ling's words. He was now completely immune to Lan Ling. Let's go. Lan Shang looked at the great illusionary Saint Capital with a complicated expression on his face. After which, he flew towards the huge city. Lu Ming and the rest followed behind. The closer they got to the huge city, the more they felt how majestic it was. In each direction of the huge city, there were 8 city gates. On top of the city walls, there were all kinds of weapons that were extremely terrifying. Needless to say, there were definitely powerful people on top of the city walls. If they wanted to enter the Great Void Holy Capital, they could only enter through those city gates. Slowly, they flew towards one of the city gates. What a huge city gate! Lu Ming exclaimed. Each city gate was extremely huge. It was more than 1,000,000 miles long and wide. Even huge races could easily pass through the city gates. From afar, they could see countless living beings flying towards the city gates. Lu Ming and the rest lined up and followed the crowd as they flew towards the city gates. To enter the Great Void Holy Capital, they had to register their information and leave behind their life aura. This was very similar to entering the 9 Extinction Heavenly King residence. Soon, it was Lu Ming and the rest's turn. Isn't that Blue Merchant? It's really Blue Merchant. He's back. Why is he back? Should we report this to the higher-ups? No need. His star core has been destroyed. He's just a useless person. There's no need to report this. The soldiers guarding the city clearly recognized Lan Shang and whispered to each other. Lan Ling was unhappy and wanted to throw a tantrum. However, she was stopped by Blue Merchant. Register our information. Blue Merchant said plainly. Ever since Jing Yu died and his star core was destroyed, he had heard such mockery many times. Hee. The guards laughed contemptuously, and then registered Lan Shang and the others. After registering, they passed through the city gates and entered the Great Void Holy Capital. Walking through the city gates, they saw countless buildings. There were all kinds of tall and ancient buildings. There was no end in sight. The wide streets were at least a few thousand miles wide. A large number of living beings walked on the streets. It was extremely bustling. Many of the living beings exuded terrifying auras. Lu Ming was shocked when he sensed it. God Kings. On the streets, there were God Kings everywhere. The number of God Kings was more than those below the God King level. How many God Kings were there in the Great Void Holy Capital? Now that the Great Void Imperial family's sacred courtyard is getting closer, experts from all over the world are gathering here. That's why there are so many God Kings on the streets. Otherwise, even in the Great Void Holy Capital, there wouldn't be so many God Kings. Blue Merchant explained. P.S. Readers, I'm the Shepherd Boy Tingzhu. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, 0 advertisements, and multiple reading modes. Chapter 3184. Lu Ming nodded his head. This was normal. However, even so, it was terrifying enough. A God King expert was considered a top expert in Qin Tian star field. But here, they were nothing. There were too many of them, and there were too many of them. Lu Ming felt a sense of urgency. With his current strength, he was definitely an overlord in Qin Tian star field. Lu Ming was confident that he could kill a God King 4th Heaven in Qin Tian star field. However, he was nothing in Great Void Sage Capital. There were too many people who could kill him. One could imagine how powerful the major forces in Great Void Sage Capital were. It would be difficult to overturn the case for Jing Yu. Lu Ming had a long way to go. They followed Blue Merchant and walked around. Soon, they arrived at a courtyard. This courtyard was relatively secluded, but it was also rather quiet. I bought this when I was in Great Void Sage Capital. As it is secluded and not big, it was not taken away. Let's stay here for the time being. Blue Merchant said. He then opened the door and walked in. The courtyard was not big, but it was well equipped. There were more than 10 rooms, which was enough for them to use. Everyone found their rooms and stayed in them. The next day, Lu Ming, I will bring you to an old friend of mine today, Blue Merchant said. All right. Lu Ming nodded his head. Lu Ming, in the Taishu sacred capital, you must not let others know that you are Jing Yu's successor. At the very least, before you are powerful enough, you must not let others know about it. Otherwise, you will be killed. Blue Merchant warned. I understand. Lu Ming nodded his head. Also, Wu Fan, the son of the imperial tutor, has his eyes on Ling. Therefore, I cannot treat you as my son-in-law. Otherwise, Wu Fan will find trouble with you. Blue Merchant frowned and mumbled. Lu Ming couldn't wait for Blue Merchant to not treat him as a son-in-law. How about this? In the future, in front of outsiders, you can treat me as your disciple. In any case, I'm a cripple. Others shouldn't care too much if I accept a disciple. Blue Merchant said. The two of them walked out of the courtyard and headed north, chatting as they walked. My old friend is from a great family in Taishu Saint Capital, the Guanggu clan. They are not like the Jin clan and the Qin clan of the 9 Extinction Heavenly King Mansion. They are much stronger than them. The patriarch of the Guanggu clan and I went through life and death together when we were young. There's a kind of divine pill in the Guanggu clan called the Nirvana pill. It's extremely effective. If a half-step Divine King Realm cultivator takes it, he or she will have a 50 to 60% chance of breaking through to the Divine King Realm. Even if a Divine King cultivator takes it, he or she will have a great chance of breaking through to the Divine King Realm without any side effects. Blue Merchant said. It can allow a half-step Divine King to have a 50 to 60% chance of breaking through to the Divine King Realm. This effect is truly heaven-defying. Lu Ming was taken aback. He was very shocked. It was extremely difficult to break through to the Divine King Realm. Countless experts were stuck in the half-step Divine King Realm. However, the Nirvana pill could allow a person to have a 50 to 60% chance of breaking through. This was already extremely heaven-defying. Moreover, if a Divine King cultivator took it, he or she would have a great chance of breaking through to the next level. Most importantly, there were no side effects. Lu Ming knew of a kind of divine pill called the King Breakthrough Pill. It could also allow a Divine King to break through to the next level. Back then, the Jin clan and the Qin clan had given the King Breakthrough Pill to the invincible Kenzo sect master of the Qin Tian Star Field, allowing them to break through to the 4th layer of the Divine King Realm. However, the King Breakthrough Pill had a great side effect. Once it was used, it would exhaust one's potential and it would be difficult to break through in the future. However, the Nirvana pill did not have any side effects. Its value was many times higher than the King Breakthrough Pill. However, the Nirvana pill can only be used once. It's only effective for the first time. The second time, there's almost no effect. You haven't used it before. With your talent, you should have a great chance of breaking through to the Divine King Realm. Blue Merchant explained. Lu Ming sighed. The Great Void Sage Capital was indeed the Great Void Sage Capital. It even had such a divine pill. The two of them chatted as they walked. Along the way, Blue Merchant told Lu Ming many things about the Great Void Sage Capital so that Lu Ming could better adapt to life in the Great Void Sage Capital. Not long after, they arrived at a teleportation zone. They stepped onto a teleportation formation. Yes, it was a teleportation formation. The Great Void Sage Capital was too big. It was bigger than a life planet. Its territory was vast and there were countless living beings living there. If everyone flew in the air, it would be a little messy. Therefore, many short-distance teleportation formations were set up in the Great Void Sage Capital. It could be used to teleport people back and forth within the Great Void Sage Capital. This way, it would be very convenient for one to go to a certain place. Not long after, Lu Ming and the rest arrived at the northern region. They came before a huge mansion. The mansion was huge and it occupied a vast area. This was the mansion of the Guanggu clan. Blue Merchant told them the reason for their visit. Naturally, someone went to inform them. "Ha, Brother Lan, long time no see. What brings you here?" Not long after, a middle-aged man walked out and laughed heartily. This man was the head of the Guanggu clan, Guanggu Jin. "Brother Guanggu, how have you been?" Blue Merchant clasped his fists. "Ah, I'm still the same. Come, let's go in and have a drink." Guanggu Jin said. In a courtyard, Lu Ming, Blue Merchant, Guanggu Jin, and a young man sat at a table. They chatted as they drank. After chatting, they found out that the young man was Guanggu Jin's son, Guangulong. "This is..." Guanggu Jin looked at Lu Ming curiously. "Brother Guanggu, this is my new disciple. His name is Lu Ming." Blue Merchant introduced. Lu Ming greets Senior Guanggu. Lu Ming clasped his fists and bowed. "Uncle Lan Shu, is this your new disciple?" Guangulong sized Lu Ming up curiously. There was a hint of contempt in his eyes as he said, "Uncle Lan, your cultivation was crippled back then. I didn't expect your judgment to deteriorate. You're not good at teaching disciples anymore. You're not even a divine king." The disdain in his words was very obvious. At this point, Guangulong's tone changed again. He said, "Uncle Lan, you haven't come to look for my father for so many years. Could it be that you have something to ask my father for help this time?" Blue Merchant's hand that was holding the cup stiffened. It would be strange if he felt good to be looked down upon by a junior. A cold light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. This Guangulong was asking for a beating. He had been mocking him since the beginning. "Lang, what nonsense are you talking about? How can you talk to your Uncle Lan Shu like that? Guan Gujin reprimanded. However, his voice wasn't loud. Anyone could tell that Guan Gujin wasn't angry at all. He was just pretending to reprimand. Father, I'm wrong. Guan Gulong pretended to admit his mistake, but the contempt on his face was even thicker. P.S. Readers, I'm the shepherd boy Tingzhu. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, 0 advertisements, and multiple reading modes. Chapter 3185. Brother Lan, please don't mind the outspoken young man. Guan Gujin looked at Blue Merchant and said with a smile. When he said that Guan Gulong was frank and outspoken, it was obvious that he was only saying that Guan Gulong was frank and did not say that he was wrong. Blue Merchant smiled bitterly and said, Brother Guan Gujin, your nephew is right. I am here today to ask for a favor. Brother Lan, please speak your mind. Guan Gujin said without a change in expression. Brother Guan Gujin, I would like to borrow a nirvana pill. Lan Shang went straight to the point and stated the purpose of his visit. What? You want to borrow a nirvana pill? Before Guan Gujin could say anything, Guan Gulong shouted exaggeratedly. You came to my father with bad intentions. You want to borrow a nirvana pill? Do you know how much it costs to refine a nirvana pill? All kinds of rare divine herbs and 9 alchemists. It takes 99,000 years to refine one. Can you afford to borrow such a precious nirvana pill? You want to borrow the nirvana pill for this kid, right? Forgive me for being blunt, but this kid is still a half-step god king. Even if he breaks through, he is still a piece of trash. He won't be chosen by the Great Void Imperial Academy. You better give up. Guan Gujin shouted louder and louder. In the end, his face was full of disdain. Lu Ming and Blue Merchant frowned. Lang, that's enough. Cut it out. Guan Gujin scolded again. Guan Gulong smiled coldly and didn't say anything. Brother Lan, my son is outspoken, but he is right about one thing. It is not easy to refine a nirvana pill. Our Guan Gujin clan doesn't have many of them. Plus, we used almost all of them to prepare for the Great Void Imperial Academy. We really don't have any left. Guan Gujin smiled bitterly. You don't have any left? Blue Merchant's frown deepened. That's right. I don't have any left. How about this? If Brother Lan is really in trouble, just ask for a few tens of thousands of high-grade divine crystals. I can still afford it. Guan Gujin smiled faintly. Brother Guan Gujin, Blue Merchant still wanted to say something. Teacher, let's go. At this moment, Lu Ming stood up and turned around to leave. The other party clearly didn't want to give them the heavenly nirvana pills, and he even said several tens of thousands of high-grade divine crystals. Was he trying to dismiss beggars? Rather than continue to be humiliated by the other party, it was better to just leave. Blue Merchant sighed in his heart. He cupped his fists at Guan Gujin and left. Haha, you don't even want several tens of thousands of high-grade divine crystals? You're just a piece of trash, yet you still have some pride. There's also that Blue Merchant. A person whose star core has been destroyed. Does he still think that he's the Blue Merchant from back then? You want the heavenly nirvana pill the moment you open your mouth. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Guan Gulong sneered. Guan Gujin smiled and didn't reprimand Guan Gujin. Instead, he said, Lang, don't worry about these trivial matters. Your goal now is to cultivate well and try to enter the Taishu Imperial Academy. Do you understand? Father, don't worry. I'm 100% confident that I'll be able to enter the Great Void Imperial Academy. Guan Gulong's face was filled with confidence. Lu Ming and Blue Merchant walked side by side as they returned to their residence. Sigh, this world is just so realistic. Blue Merchant sighed on the way back. Back then, when his cultivation wasn't destroyed and he was at his peak, many people tried to curry favor with him. His relationship with Guan Gujin was also very good. But now, he was only asking for a heavenly nirvana pill, yet he was mocked and ridiculed by the other party. Lan Shu, don't worry about it. After all, there's still more than 50 years. I might be able to break through to the Divine King realm. Lu Ming comforted. It's fine. After so many years, I'm already used to it. Moreover, I have more than one friend in the holy capital, Blue Merchant said with a smile. Not long after, they returned to their residence. The next day, Blue Merchant went out again. It was obvious that he was going to ask for help from his other friends. However, this time, he didn't bring Lu Ming with him. Not long after, Blue Merchant returned with a gloomy face. Needless to say, he didn't succeed again. For the next 10 days, Blue Merchant would go out every day. However, every time he went out with hope, he would return with disappointment. Time passed quickly. They had been in the Taishu holy capital for a month. During this month, Lu Ming cultivated peacefully. The cultivation environment in the Taishu holy capital was indeed extraordinary. Their residence was already considered remote, but the cultivation effect was no worse than the starry camp. On this day, Blue Merchant looked for Lu Ming with a joyful face. Lu Ming, your chance is here, Blue Merchant said happily. Lan Shu, what's so good that you're so happy? Lu Ming said with a smile. Lu Ming, you have a chance to cultivate in the heavenly jade annulus of the Bone Sword tribe. Blue Merchant said. The heavenly jade annulus of the Bone Sword tribe? Lu Ming was puzzled. That's right. The celestial jade annulus of the Bone Sword tribe is an extremely famous treasure even in the great illusionary divine realm. It's extremely helpful in comprehending the origin divine power factors of various types of divine powers. It can even help one awaken their origin secret techniques. Not long ago, the Bone Sword tribe released news that they're gathering people below the 3rd level of the King God realm to help them with something. As long as you complete it, you can cultivate under the heavenly jade annulus. Blue Merchant explained. What do you want me to do? Lu Ming asked. At the same time, he was looking forward to it. Lu Ming was very interested in something that could greatly help in cultivating the origin of divine powers. He now had 5 divine-grade divine powers and had awakened 99% of them. If he cultivated step by step, it would take a long time for him to break through. However, if he was lucky, he might be able to break through in a short period of time. Help the Bone Sword tribe enter a place and retrieve a material called sword bone. Blue Merchant immediately explained in more detail. The Bone Sword tribe used to be an extremely powerful tribe in the distant past. At their peak, they were even ranked in the prehistoric 10,000 tribes list. They were even stronger than the Taishu dynasty. However, they were now in decline. Compared to their peak, they were much weaker. They had become a tribe of the Taishu dynasty. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The Bone Sword tribe's foundation was still deep. The heavenly jade annulus was one of the Bone Sword tribe's foundations. Cultivating under the heavenly jade annulus was extremely helpful to one's origin of divine powers. However, the Bone Sword tribe had a secret realm that contained a precious material called sword bone. It was extremely helpful to the Bone Sword tribe. However, this secret realm had a great restriction. Those above the 3rd level of the King God realm couldn't enter. Even the Bone Sword tribe couldn't enter. Therefore, every once in a while, the Bone Sword tribe would invite people below the 3rd level of the King God realm to enter the secret realm and collect sword bones for them. They would also give out rewards. There were all sorts of rewards, and all of them were precious. However, they had never given out a reward for entering the heavenly jade annulus to cultivate. Therefore, when the news spread this time, it attracted many young geniuses to go. P.S. Readers, I am the shepherd boy Tingzhu. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, no ads, and many reading modes. Chapter 3186. After hearing Blue Merchant's explanation, Lu Ming understood. It was nothing more than someone helping the Bone Sword tribe obtain a sword bone and then exchanging it for a chance to cultivate under the sagely heaven jade annulus. This time, I plan to let you, Ling, and Miss Autumn Moon go together. This is a good opportunity for all of you. Blue Merchant said. All right. Lu Ming nodded. The next day, Blue Merchant brought Lu Ming, Miss Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling to the Bone Sword tribe. The Bone Sword tribe was a powerful force in the Taishu's sacred capital. They had a deep foundation and magnificent buildings. They were far more powerful than the Guanggu clan. In front of them, buildings that looked like divine swords stood between heaven and earth. Looking from afar, they could feel waves of shocking sword chi soaring into the sky. Although the Bone Sword tribe was no longer as glorious as it used to be, it was still a force that ordinary forces in the Taishu sacred capital couldn't compare to. It was still one of the top forces in the Taishu sacred capital. Those who are participating in the hunt for the sword bone may enter. Others are not allowed. Lu Ming and the others were stopped in front of a huge gate. We are here to hunt for the sword bone. Lu Ming stepped forward. You may enter. The guard at the gate waved his hand. Lu Ming, Miss Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling walked in. Blue Merchant waited outside. Behind the gate was a long corridor. After passing through the corridor, they arrived at a spacious training ground. Many people had already gathered here. Not all of them were young. There were many old and middle-aged people. The Bone Sword tribe only allowed those below the third layer of the King God realm to enter. There was no age restriction. Lu Ming, Miss Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling waited at the side. Ioyo, isn't this the trash who came to my house to ask for medicine? At this moment, a discordant voice rang out. Then, a few young men walked toward Lu Ming and the others. Guan Gulong. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. One of the young men was Guan Gulong. Brother Guan Gu, is this guy the disciple of that crippled blue merchant you mentioned? He's not even a god king, yet he's dreaming of going to the Guan Gu clan to ask for a nirvana pill? Another young man at the side sneered. What did you say? Hearing this, Lan Ling couldn't stand it any longer and shouted angrily. Oh my, did I say something wrong? Guan Gulong curled his lips and glanced at Lan Ling with a mocking face. Then, his eyes fell on Lu Ming as he sneered. What? You didn't get the nirvana pill from my Guangu clan, and now you want the Bone Sword tribe to cultivate under the sacred heaven jade annulus. With your half-step divine king cultivation base, I guarantee that you won't even know how you died. The commotion here attracted the attention of others. Many people looked over in this direction. A half-step divine king also wants to join in the fun? He must be possessed. Although the Bone Sword tribe said that anyone below the third layer of the King God realm can enter, it's not a joke. It's dangerous. A half-step divine king is just courting death. They're not afraid of death. Why should we care? Many people were discussing. Get lost. Lu Ming's expression was calm as he spat out a word. Guan Galong's face fell and he said, Kid, what did you say? Get lost as far as you can. Lu Ming waved his hand casually as if he was driving an ant away. Kid, you're courting death. Guan Gulong shouted coldly, his eyes cold. Boom. A powerful aura burst out from his body. It was the aura of a second-layer divine king. At the same time, an ancient aura filled the air. A second-layer divine king who had awakened the origin divine force. Kid, I will destroy your star core today. I will let you live like that crippled blue merchant. Guan Gulong shouted coldly. Shut up. Lan Ling was enraged. She unsheathed her sword and turned it into a dazzling sword light, slashing towards Guan Gulong. You're courting death. Guan Gulong took out a saber, which was long and thin, looking extremely ugly. However, its power was extraordinary. When Guan Gulong slashed his saber, the saber light slashed Lan Ling's sword light. Lan Ling's sword light shook violently and then exploded. Lan Ling retreated quickly. Her face turned pale and she almost vomited blood. After years of cultivation, Lan Ling's cultivation base had reached the peak of the first-layer divine king. However, her origin divine force had only awakened once. She was one layer lower than Guan Gulong. She was no match for him. Kid, it's your turn now. After Guan Gulong defeated Lan Ling, he looked at Lu Ming with cold eyes. Young master, let me. When Lu Ming was about to attack and beat Guan Gulong up, Autumn Moon stepped forward and landed in front of Lu Ming. Young master, let me do it this time. Chiao Yu added with a determined look. All right. Lu Ming nodded. Young master? Hearing Autumn Moon call Lu Ming young master, Guan Gulong's eyes turned red with envy. Little girl, what's so good about following this trash? Come and follow me. I promise I will make you happy, Guan Gulong sneered. Swoosh. A snow-white saber light welcomed him. Autumn Moon attacked directly. She waved her hand and a saber light slashed towards Guan Gulong's mouth. Guan Gulong was a little surprised. He hurried to block with his saber. Clang! The two saber lights collided. However, Guan Gulong's body shook violently and he was pushed back. He almost lost his grip on his saber. Second-level King God Realm. The corners of Lu Ming's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smile. Autumn Moon's cultivation had reached the second-level King God Realm, which was the same as Guan Gulong. However, Autumn Moon had cultivated the universe Myriad Dao technique and could control many divine-grade divine powers. At the same time, Autumn Moon also had the god-killing light. Her combat strength was not something that Guan Gulong could compare with. Swoosh! After pushing Guan Gulong back, Autumn Moon followed up and continued to attack with her palm. Quick, let's attack together and cripple this bitch! Guan Gulong shouted. Boom! Boom! The other young men beside Guan Gulong also made their moves. These young men were also very strong. Apparently, they were the supreme talents of the Taishu's sacred capital. There were 4 of them in total and they attacked Autumn Moon together. God-killing light. Autumn Moon's heart skipped a beat. A god-killing light appeared and turned into a saber, sweeping in all directions. Boom! 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 After 4 consecutive explosions, the 4 young men, including Guan Gulong, were sent flying like cannonballs. They coughed out blood and fell heavily on the ground. So strong! Where did such a beauty come from? Her cultivation is so strong. The Taishu imperial family's sacred courtyard is about to start. Many supreme talents from all over the world are gathering here. Now that the number of supreme talents in the Taishu sacred capital has skyrocketed, there are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. That's right. I see a few supreme talents from the Heavenly King Mansion here. The others looked at Autumn Moon in shock. Chapter 3187. Guan Gulong and the other 3 young men were all in the second heaven of the King God Realm and had awakened their origin divine force. In the entire Taishu Holy Court, although this level of strength could not be said to be at the top, it was definitely above average. However, the 4 of them were defeated by Autumn Moon. One could imagine how powerful Autumn Moon was. Bam! Chiu Yu followed up and stepped on Guan Gulong's mouth. Guan Gulong screamed in agony. His mouth was crushed and blood spurted out of his mouth. A mouthful of teeth flew out. Guan Gulong's face was completely deformed. Humph! Let's see if you dare to scold the young master. Autumn Moon snorted. Then he moved back to Lu Ming's side. Amazing! Lu Ming exclaimed. Ah, Lu Ming, do you only know how to hide behind a woman? Without this woman, I can crush you with one finger. But Guan Gulong struggled to get up and shouted. However, his teeth had not grown back yet as they had been knocked out. When he spoke, his mouth was full of air. Oh, is that so? You want to fight with me? Lu Ming's lips curled into a sneer. Just as he was about to step out, he suddenly felt a few cold, murderous intents landing on him. Lu Ming frowned and looked in the direction of the murderous intents. There were a few young men in black robes. Their faces were ghastly pale as they stared at Lu Ming coldly. It's him. He's from the abysmal Heavenly King Mansion. Lu Ming's heart stirred. Lu Ming recognized one of the young men in black robes. Previously, in Xingyue Ancient City, Lu Ming had met 3 supreme talents from the abysmal Heavenly King Mansion. 2 of them were killed by Lu Ming. Only one of them survived. The young man in front of him was the one he had met in Xingyue Ancient City. What a coincidence! Lu Ming muttered. If the other party was courting death, he would not mind sending him on his way. All right, we have enough people. We can set off now. At this moment, a group of people walked over and spoke loudly. Their voices echoed throughout the area. This group of people was from the Bone Sword tribe. Is this the Bone Sword tribe? Lu Ming looked over and was surprised. The people of the Bone Sword tribe looked very strange. They looked similar to humans, but they were all as thin as firewood. They looked like skeletons. On their backs, there was a sword hilt. Yes, they were hilts that protruded from the Bone Sword tribe. It was said that the spine of the Bone Sword race would naturally nurture a bone sword. Its power was unmatched and incomparably terrifying. The stronger the cultivation, the stronger the bone sword. This time, the sword bones they collected from the secret realm would be of great help to the cultivation of the bone sword race. Otherwise, the bone sword race wouldn't have offered such tempting conditions to ask for help. The abysmal heavenly king Yu's killing people heavenly heavens. Every once in a while, the bone sword tribe would open the mirror world and invite people to hunt for the sword bones inside. For some people, it wasn't their first time here, so they were familiar with the process. The closer they got to the mirror, the smaller their bodies became. When they got close to the mirror, their bodies became the size of a speck of dust and then disappeared into the mirror. The others followed and walked toward the mirror. "Let's go too," Lu Ming said as he and Autumn Moon Lan Ling walked along the stone bridge toward the mirror. Strangely, the closer they got to the mirror, the larger it became. In the end, the mirror seemed to cover the sky. Buzz. As soon as their bodies touched the mirror, it was as if they had passed through a layer of water. The next moment, Lu Ming and the others appeared on a flight of stairs. Behind them was also a mirror. They had entered the mirror world. Looking up, there was a boundless world in front of him. It stretched as far as the eye could see, with no end in sight. In the distance, there was a roar. "It's the sword bone beasts. Charge!" Many people rose into the air and flew into the distance. "Let's go!" Those who came here through the mirror rose into the air and flew in all directions to hunt the sword bone beasts. Lu Ming saw Guan Gulong glancing at him coldly before flying into the distance with his companions. Chapter 3188. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Then he, Chiu Moon, and Lan Ling chose a direction and flew forward. Soon, they were tens of thousands of miles away. Boom, boom. While flying, Lu Ming saw many giant beasts fighting with some experts. These giant beasts were hundreds of meters tall and had wild auras. They were the sword bone beasts. These sword bone beasts didn't have high cultivation bases. Along the way, they found that most of the sword bone beasts were in the king god realm. However, these sword bone beasts were being watched by others. There were too many people coming in. There were too many wolves and too little meat. The three of them had no choice but to fly further away. After flying for another tens of thousands of miles. "Look, sword bone beasts!" Chiu Moon pointed ahead and shouted. In front of them was a mountainous area. A few sword bone beasts were digging into the mountainous area, digging for metal to eat. "Quick, let's do it!" Lu Ming shouted. They had to hurry up. Otherwise, the sword bone beasts would be taken away again. The three of them turned into 3 streaks of light and flew toward the sword bone beasts. The sword bone beasts noticed Lu Ming's group. They roared and attacked Lu Ming's group. Pieces of bone flew out from the sword bone beasts and slashed toward Lu Ming's group like flying swords. However, these sword bone beasts were only in the king god realm. Not to mention Lu Ming and Chiu Moon, even Lan Ling could easily kill them. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks of the trio landed on the sword bone beast. Gravel flew everywhere on the sword bone beast's body and exploded. 3 sword bone beasts were killed in an instant. Lu Ming's group landed beside the sword bone beasts and started to look for the bones. The sword bone beasts had a strange structure. They weren't made of flesh and blood. They were made of rocks and metal. In the end, the 3 of them found a finger-sized black bone at the spine of the sword bone beast. The bone was in the shape of a sword, and it emitted an invisible sword pressure. They knew that this was the sword bone that the bone sword tribe needed. Lu Ming took a step forward and took the sword bone from the ground. About 5 kilograms. Lu Ming weighed it in his hand and felt rather speechless. The sword bone of a sword bone beast was only about 5 kilograms. Wouldn't that mean that he would have to kill 100 of these sword bone beasts in exchange for a day of cultivation under the sacred heaven jade annulus? It seemed like it wouldn't be easy to cultivate under the saintly heaven jade wall. After that, Chiu Autumn Moon and Lan Ling took off their sword bones. They were about the same as Lu Ming's, about 5 kilograms. "Let's continue hunting." Immediately, the 3 of them soared into the sky and continued their hunt. However, there were too many people in the beginning. Lu Ming's group saw many people fighting over the sword bone beasts. There are many sword-bone beasts in this world. There's no need to compete here. Let's go deeper first. Lu Ming suggested. The three of them didn't stay any longer. They sped up and flew into the depths of this world. As they went deeper, the crowd began to disperse. Finally, there weren't so many people. There's more ahead. Chiao Autumn Moon cried out in surprise. There were at least 5 or 6 sword-bone beasts in front of them. The three of them flew forward and killed them. Then they continued to search. With fewer people, it was much easier to find sword-bone beasts. Next, they found sword-bone beasts from time to time. This kind of sword-bone beast would not only be on the ground but also hide under the ground. Their bodies were like a mixture of rock and metal. For example, when they slept, they would hide underground. Sometimes, when they were defeated, they would hide underground. It was a troublesome thing. They had to sense carefully to find sword-bone beasts. In this way, more than a day later, Lu Ming's group had each obtained about 500 gene of black sword-bone beasts. It was enough for them to cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for about half a day. The three of them were searching for sword-bone beasts in a barren mountain. Suddenly, a loud roar was heard. The gravel on the ground exploded. A sharp claw scratched toward Lan Ling. It was very powerful. Lan Ling was shocked. She quickly waved her sword to block it. Clang! The sharp claw hit Lan Ling's battle sword. Even with Lan Ling's cultivation, she couldn't block it. Her body shook violently and was blown away. Then, a sword-bone beast rushed out from the ground. This sword-bone beast was different from the ones they had encountered before. It was much smaller. The sword-bone beasts they had encountered before were about 100 meters tall. However, this one was only 20 meters tall. Third King God Realm. A light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. He could sense that this sword-bone beast had the cultivation base of the Third King God Realm. No wonder Lan Ling couldn't block it and was blown away. In the King God Realm, the higher the cultivation base, the stronger the warrior would be. It wasn't something that could be done with some simple secret techniques. Lan Ling's innate talent was high. Her divine techniques and secret techniques were powerful. Moreover, she had awakened the god power of the origin. Even so, she could subdue or kill an ordinary second sky of King God Realm warrior. Facing a third sky of King God Realm warrior, she couldn't resist at all. The sword-bone beast roared and wanted to attack Lan Ling again. Lu Ming took a step forward and stood in front of the sword-bone beast. He threw a punch. A 9-clawed dragon condensed and dashed toward the sword-bone beast. It collided with the sword-bone beast's sharp claw. After a dull explosion, the sword-bone beast was blown away. Kill! Lu Ming bellowed and punched continuously with both fists. A total of 36 9-clawed divine dragons appeared, charging toward the sword-bone beast. After a series of explosions, the sword-bone beast was covered in wounds. It lay on the ground lifeless. With Lu Ming's current strength, it wasn't difficult to kill an ordinary Third King God Realm warrior. He didn't even need to use the original secret technique. Of course, on the day of the Sacred Institute of the Great Void Imperial family, his opponents wouldn't be ordinary King God Realm warriors. They would all be top geniuses. Who needs your help? I can handle it myself. Lan Ling flew over and said stubbornly, "Wipe the blood off your mouth first." Lu Ming smiled. Lan Ling harumphed and didn't say anything. Lu Ming stepped forward and took the sword-bone beast's bone. Silver. Lu Ming was delighted. The sword-bone beast was silver and it wasn't light. It weighed around 30 gene. 30 gene of silver sword-bone beast was equal to 300 gene of black sword-bone beast. Lu Ming took it without hesitation. He wouldn't discuss with Lan Ling about sharing it equally. If he wanted to share it equally, he would share it equally with Chiao Moon. After that, they moved more carefully. Since there was a third King God Realm sword-bone beast here, there would be a second one, a third one. As expected, the level of the sword-bone beasts increased a lot in this area. Not only the first King God Realm, but also the second and third King God Realm sword beasts. Their collecting speed had increased a lot. In the blink of an eye, they had been here for a month. On this day, while they were flying to look for sword-bone beasts, they suddenly stopped. because some young men in front of them were blocking their way. Chapter 3189. There were 3 young men in black robes with gloomy faces. They were the 3 young men from the abysmal Heavenly King mansion. The young man in black robes in the middle stared at Lu Ming like a venomous snake. He did not hide his murderous intent at all. "What do you want?" Lan Ling asked coldly. She did not know about the grudge between Lu Ming and the abysmal Heavenly King mansion. "What do we want?" "Of course, we want to kill you." The voice of the black-robed young man in the middle was extremely cold. As soon as he finished his words, he exuded a shocking aura that shrouded Lu Ming, Qiu Yu, and Lan Ling, 3rd King God Realm. Lan Ling exclaimed and her face turned pale. This young man had the cultivation base of the 3rd King God Realm. Moreover, he was a genius who had awakened the God origin. However, this was not beyond Lu Ming's expectations. The young man had seen Qiu Moon defeat Guan Gulong and the others. He was confident that he would be able to kill them. The other 2 young men from the abysmal Heavenly King mansion were much weaker. The young man they had met in Xingyue Ancient City had broken through to the 1st King God Realm. The other young man was in the 2nd King God Realm, the same as Guan Gulong. They had awakened the divine origin gene. They were probably the top young men in the abysmal Heavenly King mansion. "Young master, leave it to me," Qiu Moon said. She took a step forward and a powerful aura burst out from her body. It was extremely sharp and she broke through the young man's aura. Her eyes revealed an eager expression. Lu Ming smiled. This girl was addicted to fighting. It made sense. Ever since Qiu Yu received the inheritance of Lord of Heaven Shenyan, she had been cultivating in seclusion. She didn't have a good battle experience. After she had tortured Guan Gulong, she was very excited to fight. "Go," Lu Ming said with a smile. "You want her to fight alone?" Lan Ling was shocked. "Of course. It's just a few cats and dogs. How can we fight them together?" Lu Ming curled his lips in disdain. The 3 youths from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King's mansion almost died from anger. "The 3 of you, die together." The Sky Pride of the 9th Abyss Heavenly King residence in the middle roared and waved his hand. A few ghostly claws formed and grabbed at Qiu Autumn Moon, Lu Ming, and Lan Ling. "Your opponent is me." Qiu Yu shouted and waved her hand. 3 saber lights slashed out and split the 3 ghostly claws in half. Then he took a step forward and moved as fast as lightning. With a wave of his hand, saber light flashed and enveloped the 3 youths from the 9th Serenity Heavenly King mansion. "Kill this bitch." The strongest Heaven's Pride from the 9 Nether Heavenly King mansion roared. His figure flickered as he dodged Autumn Moon's saber light and rushed towards Autumn Moon. However, Autumn Moon's expression was calm. Her body was enveloped by divine power, and she looked like a peerless goddess. In the blink of an eye, saber lights shot out from Xiao Chen's fingers, enveloping his opponent from all directions, leaving him no room to retreat. Bam! The Sky Pride from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King mansion trembled and retreated. As for the other 2 Sky Prides from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King mansion, they had to use all their strength to avoid Autumn Moon's attack. "You're courting death. Ghostly fog kill." The leader of the 9 Nether Heavenly King manor shouted. His body actually exploded with a bang and turned into a cloud of ghostly mist. At the same time, the other 2 Sky Prides from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King mansion exploded and turned into ghostly fog. The 3 ghostly fogs expanded rapidly and soon covered a radius of 1,000 miles. Qiu Autumn Moon was also shrouded in the ghostly fog. "Let's retreat." Lu Ming pulled Lan Ling and retreated quickly, leaving the area covered by the ghostly fog. "Why are you so confident in her?" Lan Ling asked. She had seen how Qiu Autumn Moon suppressed Guan Gulong. She was envious and jealous of her strength. However, the young man from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King mansion was at the 3rd heaven of the King God realm. He had awakened the origin divine force and was 1 level higher than Guan Gulong. He could defeat Guan Gulong in 1 blow. Qiu Autumn Moon was no match for him. What's there to be worried about? Lu Ming smiled faintly. It was indeed difficult for the top Sky Prides to fight someone who was at the King God realm. However, Qiu Autumn Moon could do it. Chiyue had cultivated the myriad Tao art of the universe, mastered the god-slaying light, and had even awakened her origin source secret art. With all of these skills combined, even if her opponent was a top-notch prodigy, she wouldn't have any problems defeating him. Boom, boom. The ghostly fog was filled with explosions and beams of divine light shot out from time to time. The battle was intense. Lu Ming and Lan Ling stood in the distance and watched. Suddenly, Lu Ming turned his head and looked behind him. He said calmly, "Why are you hiding there so sneakily? Come out." Lan Ling was shocked and quickly looked back. "Haha, your spiritual senses are quite sharp." A loud laugh was heard and 4 young men flew over. Lu Ming's lips curled into a creepy smile. The 4 young men were Guan Gulong and the other 3. In fact, before Chiu Yu and the people from the 9 Nether Heavenly King Mansion fought, Guan Gulong and the other 3 had already arrived nearby. They hid in the dark and watched from afar. When Chiu Yu and the people from the 9 Nether Heavenly King Mansion fought, Guan Gulong got agitated and was discovered by Lu Ming. "Lu Ming, I didn't expect you to offend so many people despite your weak cultivation. You even offended the people from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King Mansion. Now that the woman is trapped by them, who can help you?" Guan Gulong laughed heartily without restraint. He was only afraid of Chiu Autumn Moon. Now that Chiu Autumn Moon was blocked by the others, it would be easy for him to kill Lu Ming, a half-step divine king. Fush, fush, swoosh. At this time, there was a sound coming from afar. More people had arrived. There were more than a dozen figures, both young and old. However, they did not get close but stood nearby to watch. Obviously, they were attracted by the battle between Chiu Autumn Moon and the people from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King Mansion. What a pity, Lu Ming sighed slightly at the sight of so many people. Originally, he wanted to kill Guan Gulong and the others here. However, with so many people here, it would be difficult for him to kill Guan Gulong. After all, he had just arrived at the Taishu sacred capital and had no foundation. As for Blue Merchant, he was no longer the Blue Merchant of the past and had lost his influence. As for the Guangu family, they were a big family in the Taishu sacred capital and were much more powerful than the Jin family and Qin family of the 9th Abyss Heavenly King Mansion. If he killed Guan Gulong, no one would be able to help him if Guan Gujian went crazy and wanted to kill him. Only when he entered the Taishu sacred capital and entered the top 10, he would be able to establish his own mansion and family. By then, he would have no qualms about killing Guan Gulong. However, he had to be cautious now. "I can only teach him a lesson," Lu Ming mumbled. "Kid, no matter how much you mumble to yourself, it's useless. I will destroy your astral core and let you live like that useless Blue Merchant," Guan Gulong shouted. Chapter 3190. Shut up. Lan Ling was so angry that she was trembling. She shouted and was about to rush forward to fight Guan Gulong. However, a firm and powerful hand pressed down on Lan Ling's shoulder. An indifferent voice rang in her ears, "Let me do it." Subsequently, Lu Ming stepped forward and walked towards Guan Gulong. At this moment, Lu Ming's image in Lan Ling's eyes had unknowingly become taller. What am I thinking? How did this wretched and shameless guy become taller? Lan Ling hurriedly shook her head and tossed the unrealistic thought out of her mind. Looking at Lu Ming's showy face walking towards him, Guan Gulong was furious and shouted, "A half-step divine king trash still dares to act tough here. Kneel down and eat the soil." Guan Gulong slapped Lu Ming, his speed as fast as lightning. Slap. The crisp sound of a slap was heard. Then, a figure retreated continuously. The person who retreated was naturally Guan Gulong. Although he made the first move, Lu Ming managed to land a slap on his face even though he made the first move. This slap was extremely heavy. Guan Gulong spurted out blood from his mouth and his teeth flew out. Guan Gulong roared like a pig being slaughtered. His lungs were about to explode from anger. Previously, his teeth were knocked out by Autumn Moon. During this period of time, they had finally grown back. Now, his teeth were knocked out again. He was so furious that he wanted to curse the heavens and the earth. Boom! Guan Gulong unleashed all the divine power in his body. He stared at Lu Ming with bloodshot eyes and shouted, "Brat, I'm going to chop you into 8 pieces. A slender saber appeared in his hand, and he slashed at Lu Ming with it. He was still full of confidence and believed that he could kill Lu Ming with his blade. Just now, he was too careless. He thought that Lu Ming was just a half-step divine king. Therefore, he did not take any precautions and was slapped by Lu Ming. Even if beaten to death, he did not believe that with his strength he could not even beat a half-step divine king. The saber light pierced through the air, emitting a terrifying whistling sound as it charged towards Lu Ming. Divine Dragon Dharma form. Lu Ming muttered and waved his hands. 9-clawed dragon appeared and pounced at Guan Gulong. The 9-clawed dragon drowned Guan Gulong in an instant. Boom, boom. Continuous explosions were heard. When all the 9-clawed dragon disappeared, Guan Gulong was lying on the ground like a dead dog, twitching all over. The godly dragon aspect technique allowed one to condense more godly dragon aspects, which increased the power of the technique. Now that he could condense 36 9-clawed dragons all at once, its power was astonishing. It wasn't much weaker than Lu Ming's Gate of Domination. If he could condense more than 100 9-clawed dragons in the future, its power would surpass that of the Gate of Domination. Of course, when Lu Ming awakened the origin source divine power of the sovereign's divine power, the power of the Gate of Domination would increase tremendously. The 3 sky prides who were with Guan Gulong and the people who were watching from afar were stunned. This scene had exceeded everyone's expectations. In their expectations, Lu Ming would be the one who would be beaten to a pulp. However, in the end, it was Guan Gulong who was beaten to a pulp. Lu Ming took a step forward and landed beside Guan Gulong. Let's attack together. Let's kill him together. Guan Gulong screamed in fear. Attack! The other 3 young men shouted and attacked together. 3 attacks were launched towards Lu Ming. Divine Dragon Aspect. Lu Ming roared and his divine power surged. All of his divine power was activated and the battle character art was activated. Another 36 9-clawed dragons appeared in the sky and rushed towards the 3 young men. Each of the divine dragon aspects exploded when they collided with each other. They turned into terrifying energy and rushed towards their opponents. A series of explosions were heard, and the 3 young men were sent flying. Each of them vomited blood and their faces were pale. Their eyes were filled with fear. They were all sky prides in the 2nd heaven of the king god realm. However, the 3 of them were no match for Lu Ming. They were terrified. Gosh, a half-step divine king has such powerful combat strength? The people who were watching the battle from afar were dumbfounded. Where did he come from? He's too terrifying. Sure enough, every time the Taishu Imperial Family Holy Institute is held, there will be some monstrous geniuses who can't be measured by common sense. The gathering of sky prides, the gathering of the winds and clouds. Another great battle is about to happen. Some people exclaimed and looked forward to it. They were looking forward to the battle between the sky prides of the Taishu dynasty after the Taishu Imperial Family Holy Institute was held. How exciting would it be? At this moment, Guan Gulong was scared out of his wits and he was dumbfounded. Kneel down and eat dirt. Lu Ming walked over and grabbed Guan Gulong. His divine force burst out and he caught Guan Gulong. Lu Ming, let me go. Let me go. There are so many people here. If you kill me, my father will not let you go. Guan Gulong screamed in fear. He flailed his arms and legs like a tortoise whose shell had been caught. Bam! Lu Ming ignored him. He grabbed Guan Gulong and shoved his head into the ground. Guan Gulong's head was shoved into the ground and only his body was left struggling outside. He was really eating dirt this time. The other 3 young men were shocked and they retreated frantically. Lu Ming smiled faintly and ignored them. He came to Lan Ling and watched the battle between Autumn Moon and the residents of the 9 Nether Heavenly King. Lan Ling looked at Lu Ming with mixed feelings. Lu Ming's strength was getting more and more unfathomable. She knew that Lu Ming had awakened his secret skill of origin. He had suppressed Guan Gulong and the others without even using his secret skill of origin. She was still no match for Guan Gulong. I can't lose to him. I can't. Lan Ling clenched her fists and gritted her teeth in her heart. Light of destruction. At this moment, a shout came from the area shrouded in the ghostly fog. Then, a beam of divine light shot into the sky. It was dazzling. Autumn Moon had finally used the light of destruction. As soon as the light of destruction was released, the thick ghostly fog was split into two. Two consecutive screams were heard. The ghostly fog dissipated and two figures fell to the ground. They were dead. They were two geniuses from the residence of the Nine Nether Heavenly King. One of them was in the first layer of the King God realm, and the other was in the second layer of the King God realm. They had been killed by Autumn Moon's light of destruction. Only the third layer of the King God realm genius was still alive. However, he was sent flying. There was a deep wound on his chest and blood was gushing out. Damn it! Damn it! The residents of the Nine Nether Heavenly Kings screamed in fear. He turned around and ran. Kill! Autumn Moon whispered. An ancient scimitar appeared in her hand. Autumn Moon waved her hand and the scimitar flew out. It was like a dazzling light that streaked across the sky at an unimaginable speed. In a flash, it caught up with the residents of the Nine Nether Heavenly King. Blood splattered everywhere. The residence of the Nine Nether Heavenly King was beheaded. Chapter 3191. Autumn Moon performed her origin source secret skill. Her machete flew out and killed the sky pride of the abysmal heavenly mansion. The scene was silent. Only the sound of the machete cutting through the air could be heard. Swoosh! The machete flew back to Autumn Moon's hand and disappeared. Origin source secret skill. That's the origin source secret skill. Someone exclaimed. It's the origin source secret skill. That's terrifying. I can't believe I saw a sky pride who has awakened the origin source secret skill. A half-step divine king is already terrifying. Now, there's another person who has awakened the origin source secret skill. Who are these people? Amazing! Everyone was amazed. Lan Ling's eyes were wide open. She stared at Autumn Moon with a complicated look in her eyes. She used to think that Autumn Moon was just an ordinary maid by Lu Ming's side. She didn't deserve to be by Lu Ming's side. But now, Autumn Moon's talent was terrifying. Not only was her cultivation higher than hers, but she had also awakened the origin source secret skill. Her combat strength was far above hers. Lan Ling, who had always been proud, suffered a serious blow to her self-esteem. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists tightly. At that moment, Guan Galong's head was already out of the ground. Seeing this scene, he was so scared that he almost wet his pants. He didn't have time to say anything and ran away. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. Lu Ming couldn't be bothered to chase after him. Guan Gulong knew what was good for him. It was fine if he didn't cause trouble for him in the future. If he continued to cause trouble for him in the future, he would definitely kill him. Young master, Autumn Moon took the storage rings of the sky prides of the abysmal heavenly mansion and handed them to Lu Ming. Take it. Let's go. Lu Ming smiled and flew forward. It was not a good place to stay. It was better to leave first. Soon, the three of them flew tens of thousands of miles away. They continued to look for and kill sword bones. Time passed quickly. Soon, half a year had passed. In this half a year, they had all gained a lot. Lu Ming and Qiu Yu had the greatest gains. The sword bones that they had collected were enough for them to cultivate under the sagely heaven jade wall for 10 days. Lan Ling's cultivation was relatively low, so her harvest was naturally much less. On this day, they were flying in the air looking for sword bone beasts when they suddenly heard a roar, and then a few sword bone beasts rushed out from the ground. These sword bone beasts had the cultivation base of the second sky of King God Realm. However, they didn't attack Lu Ming's group. Instead, they ran wildly in one direction. Their figures flickered as they charged forward. The sword bone beasts at the second sky of King God Realm weren't their opponents. They were killed easily. But before they could retrieve the sword bones from the sword bone beast, another roar came from afar. One by one, the sword bone beasts appeared and ran in the same direction. These sword bone beasts were all running in the same direction. They hurried to retrieve the sword bones from the sword bone beasts and then chased after the sword bone beasts. After a while, they found that the sword bone beasts were everywhere. A large number of sword bone beasts gathered together like an army, running in the same direction. Of course, Lu Ming's group wasn't the only one chasing after the sword bone beasts. Lu Ming scanned the area and saw more than 100 people chasing after them. What's going on? Lu Ming's group was astonished. They didn't join the battle but followed the sword bone beasts from a distance to see what was going on. The others didn't join the battle either. Apparently, they had the same idea. Along the way, the number of sword bone beasts increased. In the end, there were at least several thousand sword bone beasts. The sword bone beasts were gigantic. With several thousand sword bone beasts running together, the scene was terrifying. Boom boom boom. The ground shook unceasingly, rolling up a vast amount of dust and smoke. Just like that, Lu Ming's group had been following them for more than 10 days. Eventually, a giant mountain appeared in front of them. Roar, roar, roar. This giant mountain was full of sword bone beasts. Countless huge sword bone beasts gathered around the giant mountain, roaring toward the sky. Their aura was extremely terrifying. The thousands of sword bone beasts in front of Lu Ming's group also roared, and then all of them drilled into the ground and disappeared. Lu Ming saw a large number of sword bone beasts rushing from all directions of the giant mountain and then drilling into the ground. Behind these sword bone beasts, a large number of people were chasing after them. These people, like Lu Ming's group, came here to hunt sword bone beasts. There were about several thousand of them. So these sword bone beasts are gathered here. It's a bit troublesome to gather so many sword bone beasts. What's so troublesome about it? It's more fun to kill them. There's no need to look for them. Voices came from different directions. Some people with low cultivation had a dignified look in their eyes. Facing so many sword bone beasts, they felt it was tricky. Some people who were confident in themselves were more happy. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the ground around the giant mountain shook violently, and then mountains rose from the ground. The sword bone beasts are controlling the earth. Retreat. Many people shouted and hurriedly retreated. Lu Ming, Xiao Moon, and the others also retreated. Mountains rushed out from the place where they were standing just now. Originally, the majestic giant mountain in front of them was surrounded by a plain. At this moment, mountains rose from the ground like stars surrounding the moon, surrounding the giant mountain in the middle. In an instant, thousands or even tens of thousands of mountains appeared around the giant mountain. Each of them was tens of thousands of feet tall, making the terrain here complicated. From time to time, roars could be heard from the mountains, and the figures of sword bone beasts could be seen. No wonder these sword bone beasts are gathered here. They're gathering to resist us. The sword bone beasts' intelligence is so high. Didn't they say that sword bone beasts have low intelligence? I don't understand. I've come to this secret realm to help the Bone Sword tribe collect sword bones several times, but I've never seen such a situation. An old man was puzzled. Who cares? If they gather together, it'll be easier to hunt. A burly young man was extremely confident. He stepped out and flew into the mountain. As soon as the young man flew into the mountain, he was attacked. The mountain shattered, and a giant sword bone beast rushed out and attacked the burly young man. "You're courting death." The burly young man shouted coldly and threw out a punch. Boom! The sword bone beast's body exploded. Only a sword bone flew out and was caught by the young man. So strong. Many people's hearts jumped. The young man's cultivation had reached the third king god realm. More terrifyingly, his divine origin factor had awakened twice. This was an extremely terrifying genius. No wonder he was so confident. Crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Lu Ming exclaimed inwardly. Lu Ming was not confident that he could defeat such an existence. This kind of genius was extremely talented, and the secret techniques they mastered were also extremely terrifying. They might even have secret techniques similar to the ancient god body. Chapter 3192. Lu Ming would not underestimate any of the heroes in the world. The strength of these heroes and monsters could not be judged by their cultivation base. Take Lu Ming for example. Although his cultivation level was only at the half-step Divine King level, he was able to combine the battle formula, the quantum formula, the universe 10,000 Tao Sutra, the green-armored ancient god, and the origin secret skill. With these skills, Lu Ming could explode with amazing combat strength. However, he had it, but that did not mean that others did not have it. The primitive universe was too big. After countless years, there were countless terrifying secret skills. The universe myriad Tao scripture had the miraculous ability to seize the fortune of heaven and earth, but was there no other technique that could be compared with it? Not necessarily. There must be some in the vast primitive universe. As for the origin ancient characters, there were not just one or two of them. From the quantifying character formula, there were quite a number of origin ancient characters. Others could also obtain them. As for secret skills like the ancient god technique, there were countless of them in the primitive universe. There might be monsters stronger than Lu Ming. What kind of monsters will we meet on the day of the Great Void Imperial Family's Sacred Institute? Lu Ming was looking forward to it. Boom! The young man killed several more sword bone beasts and obtained the sword bones. Kill! Let's go! The others could not sit still and rushed into the mountains. People rushed in from all directions. Bang! Bang! As the crowd rushed in, the ground cracked. More sword bone beasts rushed out and pounced on the experts. Among the sword bone beasts, some were weak, some were in the third layer of the King God realm, and some were even in the fourth layer of the King God realm. Many of the weaker cultivators were killed by the sword bone beasts. Fierce fighting broke out in the endless mountains. Lu Ming, Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling also rushed in. When they came to the vicinity of a huge mountain, the mountain rocks exploded. At least a dozen sword bone beasts charged toward them. Some of them were weak and some were strong. They cooperated with each other and pounced on Lu Ming and the others. Lu Ming transformed into the green-armored ancient god realm, which was bigger than the sword bone beasts. At the same time, his combat strength was quadrupled. Boom! The long spear lashed out and killed several sword bone beasts, including a sword bone beast of the third King God realm. At the same time, Autumn Moon also unleashed her light of god slaying. Divine light flashed and split several sword bone beasts in half. Lan Ling didn't intervene. Not only that, he still needed Lu Ming and the others to take care of him. It was another blow to her self-esteem. Just at that moment, a terrifying roar rang out. A sword bone beast charged at Qiu Yu at an astonishing speed. A wild wind whistled, and a terrifying gale swept up. Fourth layer of King God realm. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. Clang! Autumn Moon turned around and slashed out, clashing with the sword bone beast. The sword bone beast's body trembled as it was sent flying. However, Autumn Moon was also sent flying. The fourth King God realm was much stronger than the third King God realm. Moreover, breaking through to the Divine King realm was getting more and more difficult. It was especially difficult to break through to the fourth King God realm. Normally, people with divine power could break through to the Divine King realm if they were lucky enough. For example, many divine kings in the Qin Tian Star area relied on divine power to break through to the Divine King realm. However, after breaking through to the Divine King realm, it was extremely difficult to continue breaking through. It was extremely difficult to break through to the next King God realm. Moreover, once one reached the third King God realm, it was the end of the road. If one wanted to break through to the fourth King God realm, it would be almost impossible unless they had a heaven-defying opportunity. Only by using the King Breaking Pellet could one break through to the next level. Those who could break through to the fourth King God realm and above could control divine power. In other words, almost all the experts above the fourth King God realm could control divine power. The strength of such characters was extremely astonishing. For example, the genius from the Nine Serenities Heavenly King Mansion was in the third King God realm. He had awakened the divine power of the origin once. However, if he were to fight against a fourth King God realm expert, he wouldn't be able to defeat him. The higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to fight against someone with a higher cultivation level. The sword bone beast dashed toward Qiu Autumn Moon. God's blade! Qiu Autumn Moon muttered. The god's blade appeared in his hand again. The god-destroying light merged with the god's blade as he slashed at the sword-bone beast. This slash was as easy as crushing dry weeds. The sword-bone beast was cut in half and died on the spot. Chiao Autumn Moon stepped forward and took the sword bone. Golden sword bone. Chiao Autumn Moon exclaimed in surprise. Lu Ming also looked happy. This was the first time they had obtained a golden sword bone. It seemed like only sword bone beasts above the fourth king god realm could have golden sword bones. Let's continue. We'll go deeper. Lu Ming said. Lu Ming, you two go in. I'll hunt outside. Lan Ling said. You're not coming with us? Lu Ming asked. No, you two go in. Lan Ling shook her head. She was following Lu Ming and Chiao Autumn Moon, so she had no chance to interfere. All right, be careful. Lu Ming didn't force Lan Ling. Then he and Chiao Autumn Moon went deeper into the mountain. The deeper they went, the more sword-bone beasts they encountered. They attacked them from time to time. After a while, another sword-bone beast in the fourth tier of the king god realm dashed toward them. This time, Lu Ming used the god's gate. The god's gate kept suppressing the fourth king god realm sword-bone beast. After a few attacks, the sword-bone beast finally fell apart. It was killed by Lu Ming. Fourth king god realm sword-bone beast is really powerful. With my current strength, it's not difficult to kill it. However, I'm afraid I'm not a match for a fifth king god realm sword-bone beast. Lu Ming sighed. It was an ordinary fifth king god realm sword-bone beast. If it was a fifth king god realm sword-bone beast that had awakened the divine origin gene, it would be a different story. Lu Ming still wasn't satisfied. If others knew what Lu Ming was thinking, they would be furious. It was the king god realm. It was difficult to fight against a higher level. Lu Ming was only a half-step king god realm sword-bone beast, but he still wasn't satisfied. Lu Ming stepped forward and took the sword-bone beast. A golden sword-bone beast weighed 30 jin. A black sword-bone beast weighed 3,000 jin. It was enough to cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 3 days. The two of them continued to fight. A chaotic battle broke out in this area. Although many sword-bone beasts were killed, many outsiders were killed as well. Those with insufficient cultivation base didn't dare to go deeper. They could only hunt in the outer area, which was relatively safer. However, this time, many geniuses had come. Some of the geniuses were terrifying. They killed their way in. Lu Ming even found a few who were as strong as him and Autumn Moon. There are so many geniuses, Lu Ming exclaimed. There were still a few decades before the opening of the Great Void Imperial Family Academy. Obviously, many geniuses hadn't come yet. This was only a group of geniuses gathered by the Bone Sword tribe. There were so many terrifying geniuses among them. Lu Ming immediately felt the pressure. It wasn't easy to enter the top 10. Chapter 3193. It wasn't difficult for some powerful geniuses to kill cultivators in the fourth king god realm. Therefore, although the terrain was complicated and there were many sword-bone beasts hiding underground, the geniuses couldn't stop them. These geniuses were killing the sword-bone beasts at an astonishing speed. Half an hour later, Lu Ming and Chiao Moon had climbed over hundreds of mountains and killed hundreds of sword-bone beasts. They had gained a lot. At this moment, a terrifying roar rang out from the peak of the mountain. A violent aura spread out in all directions. Lu Ming and the others saw a sword-bone beast appear on the mountain in the middle. This sword-bone beast was only 2 meters tall. Its whole body was golden, like a battle sword. Bang! The sword-bone beast stomped on the ground, shattering the rocks. The sword-bone beast dashed out like a bolt of lightning. Its target was the tall and sturdy young man who had entered the mountain first. The golden divine light streaked across the sky and approached the young man in a flash. It was like a divine sword piercing the young man's forehead. Boom! The young man roared. Divine light filled the air as he threw out a punch. The fist and the golden sword light collided, and a violent boom erupted. The tall and sturdy young man was sent flying like a cannonball. He crashed into a mountain that was tens of thousands of meters high. The golden light disappeared and the sword-bone beast reappeared. Its eyes were cold. It roared and continued to attack the tall and sturdy young man. The tall and sturdy young man rushed out of the rubble. His face was pale and there was blood on the corner of his mouth. His body glowed and a suit of armor appeared. The armor covered the young man's body. There was a pair of wings on the armor like a big bird. The young man didn't fight the sword-bone beast. He turned around and ran away. The wings on the armor flapped and he quickly retreated to the outside of the mountain. The golden sword-bone beast saw that it couldn't catch up with him. It stopped and looked at the others coldly. Chiu Moon, retreat. Lu Ming pulled Chiu Moon and retreated quickly. The sword-bone beast was too powerful. The tall and sturdy young man was no weaker than any of them. He might even be stronger. However, he was still injured by the sword-bone beast in one move and had to retreat. Even if the two of them joined forces, they were no match for the sword-bone beast. Not only Lu Ming and the others, but some other terrifying prodigies also retreated. The golden sword-bone beast roared. Then, the mountain rocks exploded and a large number of sword-bone beasts crawled out from the ground. They formed an army of sword-bone beasts and charged in all directions. Rumble! A large number of sword-bone beasts gathered together and attacked together. The power was extremely terrifying. Immediately, many people were killed. Lu Ming and the others quickly retreated and soon arrived at the periphery. They saw Lan Ling being surrounded by two sword-bone beasts. Lu Ming instantly killed the two sword-bone beasts. Go! Lu Ming shouted and rushed out of the mountain with Lan Ling. At this moment, the others also rushed out of the mountain. When they rushed out of the mountain, the sword-bone beasts stopped and didn't pursue them. Roar, roar, the golden sword-bone beast roared. The other sword-bone beasts adjusted their formation and prepared to defend. Everyone finally realized that the sword-bone beasts were under the command of the golden sword-bone beast. Everyone stopped in the air and watched from afar. What's that golden sword-bone beast? Its fighting strength is so terrifying. It's comparable to the fifth king god realm or even higher. Someone said with a solemn face. It should be the fifth king god realm. However, it's comparable to a fifth king god realm cultivator who has awakened the original divine power factor once. The tall and sturdy young man said. He had fought with the golden sword-bone beast before, so he knew how strong it was. What? That's terrifying. Many people sucked in a cold breath. This time, the strongest one was in the third king god realm. How could a third king god realm cultivator fight against a fifth king god realm cultivator who had awakened the original divine power factor once? Lu Ming frowned. With his current strength, he wasn't a match for an ordinary fifth king god realm cultivator, let alone a fifth king god realm cultivator who had awakened the original divine power factor once. No wonder the tall and sturdy young man wasn't a match for the golden sword-bone beast. I've never seen a sword-bone beast like that before. Could it be a mutated one? An old man said. What should we do now? What can we do? Let's go back. We can't kill any more sword-bone beasts. The crowd was in a heated discussion. However, some of the stronger geniuses didn't want to give up. These geniuses were going to join the Great Void Imperial Family's Sacred Institute. They wanted to improve their strength before the Sacred Institute opened. Cultivating under the saintly Heaven Jade Wall would undoubtedly increase one's combat strength faster. Every additional day of cultivation was a form of improvement. Why don't we team up? The tall and sturdy young man said, looking at Lu Ming, Autumn Moon, and the other strong geniuses. He looked at the geniuses who were at the same level as him. At least in terms of fighting strength, they were at the same level. All right, I agree to team up. As long as we team up and kill this golden sword-bone beast, we can hunt the other sword-bone beasts. A few geniuses said, their eyes shining brightly. What about the rest of you? The tall and sturdy young man looked at Lu Ming and Autumn Moon. To be honest, Lu Ming and Autumn Moon's strength shocked them. They had awakened their origin source secret techniques. Lu Ming was only a half-step divine king, but he was already so terrifying. They regarded him as a great enemy. Geniuses at this level all wanted to enter the top 10. To put it bluntly, the other geniuses were their competitors. But now, cooperation was the only way to win. All right, let's team up. Lu Ming nodded. This was a rare opportunity, and he didn't want to retreat. Then let's kill them. Ha! The tall and sturdy young man was very forthright. He laughed loudly, and the aura on his body was as heavy as a mountain. He was like a violent dragon. Although he was injured earlier, his recovery speed was amazing and he was fine now. Swoosh, swoosh. Lu Ming and the others stepped forward toward the mountain in front of them. Together with Lu Ming and Autumn Moon, there were 7 geniuses in total. Each of them could kill a 4th-layer Divine King Realm expert. The 7 of them gathered together, and like a divine sword, they rushed toward the mountain. The others didn't follow. They just watched from afar. The golden sword bone beast's roar shook the sky, as if it was giving an order. Then, the other sword bone beasts went berserk. They rushed toward Lu Ming and the others in unison. The two sides collided. Dominator's Gate. Lu Ming used the Dominator's Gate. The huge Dominator's Gate emitted an ancient aura, and it pressed forward. Bang, bang. When the Dominator's Gate pressed down, a dozen sword bone beasts were crushed and died on the spot. Lu Ming waved his hand and put away the sword bone beasts of different colors. Chapter 3194. On the other side, Chiao Autumn Moon used her ruler's blade. The ancient scimitar combined with the god-destroying light made its power even more terrifying. Dozens of sword bone beasts were cut in half every time it flew by. The other 5 geniuses were also using their own techniques. The 5 geniuses were astonishingly strong. Although they hadn't awakened their original secret techniques, their cultivation bases were profound. Moreover, their original divine force factor had been awakened for the second time. Their fighting strength wasn't any weaker than Lu Ming's. In fact, they were even stronger than Lu Ming. With the 7 of them working together, they easily killed a large number of sword bone beasts. Even sword bone beasts of the 4th King God realm were killed in an instant. They kept rushing toward the golden sword bone beasts. Bang, bang. However, at this moment, the ground cracked open. Several golden lights flashed and 3 golden sword bone beasts charged toward Lu Ming's group. The wind whistled and the 3 golden sword lights cut through the void. Lu Ming's group of 7 was shocked. They focused on defending themselves. Lu Ming controlled the ruler's gate to suppress one of the golden lights. At the same time, Chiao Autumn Moon waved her hand. Her scimitar flew out and cooperated with Lu Ming to slash at the golden light. The other 5 geniuses worked together to block the other 2 golden lights. Boom, boom. The ruler's gate hit the golden light and exploded with earth-shattering explosions. Sword chi spread out in all directions. The ruler's gate trembled and was sent flying back. At the same time, Chiao Autumn Moon's scimitar was also sent flying back. However, the golden light was finally blocked, revealing its true form. It was a golden sword bone beast. However, it was different from the previous one. This one was 10 meters tall and its aura was intimidating. 5th King God Realm. Lu Ming's face turned solemn. This golden sword bone beast was also in the 5th King God Realm. However, it hadn't awakened its original divine force factor. At the same time, the other 2 golden sword lights were blocked, revealing their true forms. They were also 10 meters tall golden sword bone beasts. 3 5th King God Realm sword bone beasts stood in front of the 7 geniuses. The 7 of them all had grave expressions on their faces. 3 sword bone beasts at the 5th King God Realm weren't easy to deal with. However, they were not afraid. If they were alone, none of them could defeat a sword bone beast. However, if the 7 of them joined hands, they might be able to defeat 3 sword bone beasts of the 5th King God layer. The 3 golden sword bone beasts roared and their bodies emitted golden light. They turned into 3 golden battle swords and slashed towards the 7 people. Kill. Lu Ming's group of 7 also launched their own attacks at the 3 sword bones. Both sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. Lu Ming did not use the Tyrant God Spear. It was not the time for the Great Void Imperial family's holy courtyard to be held yet, so he still had to save some trump cards. The whirlpool of God power in his body spun crazily. Endless God power poured into the God's Gate. The God's Gate emitted an ancient aura. There was a strong suction force acting on the sword-bone beasts, affecting their movements. Then, the god's gate suppressed them with great force. However, the fifth king god realm sword-bone beast was indeed powerful. Its body turned into a battle sword. Every time it slashed at the god's gate shook violently. Lu Ming felt the rebound force and was forced to retreat. If it weren't for Autumn Moon's help, he would have been defeated. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon joined hands to block the sword-bone beast for the time being. The other 5 geniuses joined hands to fight against the 2 sword-bone beasts. They had a slight advantage, but it was not easy to win. At the same time, the other sword-bone beasts gathered around them. Sword lights flew out from their bodies and slashed towards Lu Ming's group of 7. They were in a hurry and were at a disadvantage. At the same time, the 2-meter-tall golden sword-bone beast at the top of the mountain roared. It took a step forward and charged towards Lu Ming's group. Oh no! Lu Ming's group was shocked. They were already at a disadvantage. If the king of sword-bone beasts joined the battle, they would be in danger. Back off! The burly young man shouted. He wanted to retreat. Clang! At the same time, a sword light flew towards them from outside the mountain. The sword light was white and dazzling. It was like a flying immortal. Wherever the sword light passed, the sword-bone beasts were killed. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 sword-bone beasts were killed. How terrifying! Everyone's heart trembled. The power of this sword light was simply astonishingly powerful. After killing more than 100 sword-bone beasts, the sword light changed its direction and charged towards the 2-meter-tall king of sword-bone beasts. The king of sword-bone beasts roared. Its golden light shone brightly and turned into a golden sword light that soared into the sky. The 2 sword lights met in the air and collided, creating a brilliant light. It was as if a sun had appeared in the sky. Then, rings of shockwaves spread out in all directions. Mountains were blasted apart by the shockwaves and turned into rubble. Buzz! The sword light vibrated. The king of sword-bone beasts suddenly retreated and turned back into its original form. It retreated tens of thousands of meters and crashed into a mountain. It was repelled. The king of sword-bone beasts was repelled. It was no match for the enemy. Everyone was shocked. What kind of existence was so terrifying? At the same time, the sword light in the sky finally dimmed, revealing a figure. It was a young man with silver hair. He was wearing a white robe and holding a 3-foot-long sword. His sword chi was soaring into the sky. The sword light just now was transformed by this young man. Kill? The young man said coldly. The sword light burst out, and he became one with the sword. Once again, he turned into a sword light and attacked the king of sword-bone beasts. The king of sword-bone beasts roared and pounced on the young man. Clang, clang. The 2 sides continued to collide. However, the king of sword-bone beasts was at a disadvantage and kept retreating. After more than 10 moves, the king of sword beasts roared unwillingly. The golden sword light collapsed and the king of sword-bone beasts was revealed. The king of sword-bone beasts looked unwilling. Then, with a cracking sound, its body split into 2 halves. It was dead. It was dead. The king of sword-bone beasts had been killed. It had only been a dozen moves and the king of sword-bone beasts had been killed. Everyone gasped and looked at the silver-haired young man in astonishment. His battle prowess was too terrifying. The 5th-layer godly king realm sword-bone beast king, who had awakened the godly origin gene once, was killed in just a dozen moves. How strong! Lu Ming had a grave expression in his eyes. The highest cultivation level of the people who had come here was below the 3rd king god layer. In other words, the silver-haired young man was at the 3rd king god layer, but he could easily kill the king of sword-bone beasts. His fighting strength was terrifying. Even if Autumn Moon had reached the 3rd king god layer, she might not have such fighting strength. The silver-haired young man gave Lu Ming a dangerous feeling. This was something that Lu Ming had never experienced before. Chapter 3195. Origin Ancient Character. It's the origin ancient character. At this moment, in Lu Ming's sea of consciousness, the quantifying formula shouted in shock. What? Origin ancient character? Where is the origin ancient character? Lu Ming was also shocked. There's an origin ancient character on that silver-haired kid. The quantifying formula shouted. What? He actually has an origin ancient character on him? Lu Ming was shocked. According to the quantifying formula, the origin ancient character was extremely rare, and there were only a few dozen in the entire primitive universe. It was already a heaven-defying opportunity for him to get 2 origin ancient characters. Apart from him, he had never seen a second person with an origin ancient character. Now he saw it. The other party could actually get the origin ancient character. Needless to say, he was also a heaven-defying person. Which one of the origin ancient characters on him? Lu Ming asked. I don't know, I can only roughly sense the origin ancient character on him. The quantifying formula said, since you can sense the origin ancient character on him, does that mean he can also sense the origin ancient character on me? Thinking of this, Lu Ming was shocked. The origin ancient character must not be leaked, otherwise he would be in big trouble. No, I can sense it because I'm the quantifying formula, which is extremely sensitive to all energy. Just now, when the silver-haired kid was fighting with the Swordbone Beast King, he activated the origin ancient character, so I sensed a little. If he didn't activate it, I wouldn't be able to sense it either. As for the other origin ancient characters, they don't have this function. You can ask the battle ancient character if he can sense it. The quantifying formula said proudly. The battle ancient character was speechless. I see. Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief and felt more at ease. At the same time, there was a trace of fire in his heart. The other party had the origin ancient character on him. If he could get it, wouldn't his strength be stronger? But thinking about it was just thinking about it. The other party's current strength was far above his, and now it was just a thought. Roar! The Swordbone Beast King was killed, and all the Swordbone Beasts at the scene roared and then rushed in all directions in a disorderly manner. As soon as the Swordbone Beast King died, all the Swordbone Beasts panicked and fled frantically. Including the 3 golden Swordbone Beasts that were fighting Lu Ming and the others, they plunged into the ground and disappeared. Clang! The silver-haired young turned into a sword light and began to hunt those Swordbone Beasts that fled in all directions. Kill. Next, Lu Ming and the rest also took action to hunt the Swordbone Beasts. Now was a good time. The number of Swordbone Beasts was very dense. It would be very fast to kill them. Kill. The others who were watching the battle from afar also rushed towards the Swordbone Beasts. In the beginning, they hunted very quickly. Slowly, many Swordbone Beasts scattered. Some burrowed into the ground, and their hunting speed slowed down. Lu Ming, Mid-Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling regrouped and hunted in one direction. In the end, it became the same as before. They slowly searched and hunted. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, they had been in this secret realm for a year. A year was up, and it was time for them to go out. The Bone Sword tribe only gave them a year. The reason why they only gave them a year and not longer was because they were afraid that too many Swordbone Beasts would be killed. Every once in a while, they would kill a portion of the Swordbone Beasts to give them enough time to reproduce and grow stronger. This way, they would have an endless supply of swordbones to use in the long run. Lu Ming and the others flew toward the exit and left the secret realm. Alright, almost all of you are out. Come with us to count the sword bones and exchange them for time to cultivate in the sacred heaven jade wall. An expert from the Bone Sword tribe said. Everyone followed the expert from the Bone Sword tribe to a spacious area. Then, they lined up and went forward to count their sword bones. You have a total of 3,000 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 3 days. Take this jade talisman. It contains your cultivation time. An elder from the Bone Sword tribe handed a jade talisman to a young man after counting. Then he continued to count the sword bones of the next person. You have a total of 1,500 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 1.5 days. You have a total of 1,000 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 1 day. One by one, they began to count their sword bones. Most people did not have many sword bones. Not many could cultivate for a few days. Some could only cultivate for a few hours. As for those who could cultivate for more than 10 days, that was extremely rare. Soon, everyone's gaze fell on a silver-haired young man. This was the terrifying genius who had killed the king of swordbone beasts. When he took out all the sword bones, the expert from the bone sword tribe who was in charge of counting the sword bones was shocked. There were piles of sword bones, black, silver, and golden. They were extremely dazzling. "Count them," the silver-haired young man said lightly. But the expert counted them and soon gave the specific data. A total of 100,000 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 100 days. The elder from the bone sword tribe said. 100 days. Many people gasped and then looked at the silver-haired young man with envy. 100 days. Those who could only cultivate for a few hours were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. Comparisons were odious. This person's combat strength is terrifying. I wonder where he came from? He's definitely not a genius from around the holy capital. He should be a genius from one of the heavenly king's mansions. But with such terrifying combat strength, I think he can challenge the top 10 of the holy capital. Indeed. I wonder how many terrifying people will appear in the 27 heavenly king's mansions this time. Some people whispered. The silver-haired young man took the jade talisman and closed his eyes to rest. 100 days. Lu Ming was also speechless. Soon, it was Lu Ming and the others' turn. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon also gained a lot. Autumn Moon obtained 36 days of cultivation time. As for Lu Ming, he obtained 35 days. Of course, compared to the silver-haired young man, it was not as dazzling. As for Lan Ling, it was much less. She followed Lu Ming and the others and obtained a lot of sword bones. In the end, she obtained 12 days of cultivation time. It didn't take long for everyone to finish counting and obtain a jade talisman. Then, the Bone Sword Tribe people led them to the Sacred Heaven Jade Wall. The Sacred Heaven Jade Wall was surrounded by layers of large formations. If not for the Bone Sword Tribe experts leading the way, outsiders would not be able to enter. After passing through the layers of large formations, a huge jade wall appeared in front of them. This jade wall was incomparably huge. It was 100 feet tall and tens of thousands of meters long. All kinds of patterns appeared on it, and it looked incomparably ancient. Legend had it that the patterns on the Sacred Heaven Jade Wall were not carved by humans, but naturally, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.